D.C. with second-degree murder while armed. In this case, video evidence and hard work by our detectives was the key to piecing these events together. All of the facts of the case are outlined in the arrest affidavit, which will be available from the court. At 8 o'clock this morning, Mr. Lewis turned himself in and was taken into custody. I know the community has a lot of anticipation, and it is our job as the Metropolitan Police Department to investigate each crime to the full extent so that we can hold those responsible accountable. That will end the official statement, and any questions that you have related to the investigation I can address.
What occurred step by step, as much as you can tell us, and who was standing where the shots were fired from, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so all of that information, the step by step, is outlined in the affidavit. Essentially, Mr. Lewis exited his residence. Upon exiting the residence, a shot was fired. After that shot was fired, our decedent, in this case, young Karon, he and another person who's unidentified began to run. At some point, Karon ran toward Mr. Lewis, and Mr. Lewis fired shots, striking Karon and killing him. He was standing outside of his door, but still on the property. So again, the facts and all those things are laid out in the affidavit. Next question. I'll go back here to Mark.
Chief, so to that point, we've seen the arrest warrant. So we see the photographs of Mr. Lewis extending his arms, standing behind the wall of his courtyard. We know Karon's body was found in the shrubs right outside there. Mr. Lewis has asserted that he is innocent and that this is self-defense, and you even said that Karon was running toward him. So if he was, can you kind of square that for us? If he was running towards someone who felt on his property that he was in threat.
So it appears that the first shot that was fired actually at a getaway vehicle that was parked nearby. The first shot was not fired. It doesn't appear it was fired at Karon. It appears that Karon was perhaps trying to make his way back, from the video that I've seen, trying to make his way back to the vehicle that was sitting there. And when that vehicle reversed into the alley, ultimately crashing, Karon ran in a direction. It's hard to say. I mean, obviously, I don't know if he knew that Mr. Lewis was standing where he was standing, but you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's dark out there, and as we learned through the investigation, again, what was initially described to us, you know, there were some discrepancies there as we went through our investigation. You know, the initial shot being fired at the getaway vehicle was not part of the initial discussion that we had with Mr. Lewis.
And then also from the arrest warrant, can you comment on what appear to be Karon's last words? I'm a kid, I'm only 12, please don't, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's in the warrant as well. Based upon video evidence, we were able to glean what transpired between them from one of the video surveillance cameras that we reviewed going into the bay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you know, and probably everyone in the city knows, Mark, I mean, anytime we have a loss of life, especially that of a child, you know, I mean, that's something that really just pierces my soul, to be quite honest with you. You know, here we have a kid who's dead, who shouldn't be, right? I mean, I would hope that anybody with half of a heart would you know, that would impact you in some way, shape, form, or fashion. This young man shouldn't be dead, but, you know, he is. And now, again, we have to go through the course of the judicial process, you know, something that will never, unfortunately, bring him back, but to deal with the family, to deal with, you know, Karon's relatives, and, I mean, you know, schoolmates. I mean, it's a lot really to unpack there. And when you add to that, you know, a video information that we were able to glean from the investigation, personally, you know, I'm a father. It impacts me. Yes.
Why did it take so long? Now, I know in most cases you don't have the admitted shooter standing there on the scene. You've got to go out and try to find somebody, but ultimately you did charge, and I guess the question is, why did it take so long?
Well, I think, when you say take so long, I mean, I've been doing this work for 30 plus years, Sam, and you've been in this business for a long time. And the time that it has taken, I don't think, any time could be too soon, especially through the lens of someone who lost a loved one. But we want it to be methodical. We want it to be correct and not make any assumptions. We wanted to follow the evidence. There was somewhat of a self-defense claim made that needed to be overcome. Mr. Lewis in this case was a licensed concealed carry permit holder on his property when this shooting happened. And we wanted to get to the bottom of this. As I said to the community several days after this tragic murder of Karon happened, we wanted to get to the bottom of this. And I'm not going to rush to judgment because of what somebody think I should be doing or how long somebody think the investigation should have taken. The investigation took the amount of time that it needed to take so that we would be at this point where we have a warrant signed by a judge, investigation and information that have been before grand jury supported by that. In this case, will now go through the judicial process. So I am very comfortable with the timeline and the urgency that MPD and the rest of the parties that are involved, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the attention. I know detectives have been working around the clock on this case. So again, I've been doing this for a long time. And again, arrest can't come too soon for family members and victims. I get that, but we wanted to make sure we did this right. Yes, next question right here.
We've been hearing that there was a confrontation leading up to the ultimate shooting. Outside of this one interaction when Karon was running towards Mr. Lewis, any indication on the video that there were words exchanged, there was a confrontation with Karon individually prior to the gun being
That's
shot?
inaccurate information. There was no confrontation between them and no real words exchanged between them. That's inaccurate, so, yep. Next question, this gentleman here, and then I'll go over here to this side, yep.
Hey, Chief, switching topics slightly, I
Yeah.
wondered if you could give an update on
Can we stay on this one for
Yeah.
any other questions on this one before we switch topics?
case I want to
Steph?
ask about?
Did the reward offered help in the police investigation? Is anyone getting that reward?
We'll go back through with the detectives. It was more of the video that people provided, so we'll go through and see if we will issue reward money. I mean, people were just coming like, hey, here's the camera from my house, my business, my et cetera, that really helped us to get to where we are. So we'll assess whether or not we're going to be paying out a reward. All right, now other questions on this topic? Yes, sir.
Yeah, in the video, did you see, were those kids actually breaking into cars? And,
Yes.
And will this video be released to the public?
Well, it's part of the evidence now. That's a decision that the U.S. Attorney's Office will have to make. It's not an MPD video. It's not a body-worn camera. It doesn't fall under any of that. But that will be a judgment call for what the courts and the U.S. Attorney's Office decide to do. My guess is probably not, because this case will go to trial, and that will be part of the evidence that will be presented. Yes, Mark?
Chief, have the
sir.
people
sorry,
who were,
Bob.
it's all right. The people who were with Karon that night, have they come forward? Have you found them?
No, and we're asking for the young men who were with Karon that night if they would, in fact, come forward. Obviously, this is a very tragic situation, but we want, again, in an effort to make sure that we really are able to wrap our minds around everything that occurred. We want to make sure that we're able to talk to all parties involved. Going back over here to this gentleman. Yes, sir.
Holmes Library with CNN. Could you clarify, I'm sorry if I missed this earlier, who the initial shots at the vehicle came from? Who fired those shots?
Mr. Lewis, the
Okay.
person who we arrested. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, they were breaking into cars. I know that might be in the
So it appears that the young men, they got out of a vehicle. They had flashlights. They were peering into cars that were in the block in front of where Mr. Lewis resides, and they were going into the cars. Yeah. Yes, Mark. Yes.
Were admittedly caught on video breaking the law to come forward. Can they come forward without any fear of being charged with crimes related to that evening?
So yeah, we're not looking to right now what charges would or wouldn't be levied. My assessment is that these young men obviously they need some intervention somewhere from somebody. If they were in a stolen car, they're out that time of the morning, I want to make sure that, they get what they need. I mean, you can talk to the AG or whoever, if they're juveniles, about whether or not charges will come forward. But my really primary focus is making sure that they get what it is they need in this space in terms of whatever services. But in addition to that, making sure that we have a full understanding and accountability of what happened.
And then you expressed concern about the safety of people who are being wrongfully accused of
Yeah.
this. Can you talk about if Mr. Lewis were to be released, now his name and his home address are in public documents here, do you have concerns for his safety should he be released, or for the safety of his property? And can you update us on the status of his carry permit?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. Obviously when this happened, there was a lot of speculation about who the involved party was. I mean, people going to putting out their images of people who were not involved, going to different people's place of work, their business, that kind of thing. And I think that speaks to the level of the potential security risk there. Obviously, there's a risk. There's a lot of community angst in this space around this shooting. So obviously, I have some concerns there, but that's a determination that the court will make. What is the best interest of Mr. Lewis's safety at this point? Whether he'll be held or released, they'll make that determination. Now that he has been arrested, Metropolitan Police Department will serve him with revocation of the concealed carry permit and any firearms that he has lawfully purchased. We will take possession of those firearms.
Does he still have more than one handgun or one gun registered?
I don't remember off the top of my head, Mark, if he did it, but whatever he has registered, we will take that. Yes. Go on.
I'm sorry. Besides saying what he said on the phone call to 911, has he been forthcoming, Mr. Lewis, in terms of what
he
happened
made
that
an
night?
initial statement, and then he was represented by counsel, and he speaks obviously through his attorney. Go over here, Stephanie.
Chief,
Yeah.
we all know there's a lot to unpack with this case, but
Yes.
one of the elements here was a person potentially protecting their self or their property. Can you please talk to us about what your biggest grievance was with the way that he fired as the chief of police for DC?
So I think the biggest grievance is that the first shot that was fired was actually fired at someone who was sitting in a vehicle who was not an immediate threat to the person who fired the shot. So that in itself, raises issues, right? You have a vehicle that's parked over here, a shot gets fired at that person that's sitting in the car. What if that person got hit by that round, right? By that bullet, or an innocent person, or that bullet went into somebody's house. So that obviously is the concern. I mean, it's not consistent with training that one would receive for a concealed carry permit. If you're not in fear of, or an immediate threat to your physical being or someone else's, that is problematic for me. And I think from that point, and again, this is not something that we knew the night of, but from that point, everything else that kind of unfolds is as a result of that initial shot that gets fired. So whether, Karon knew or didn't know, that a person was standing there with a gun who he was running at, or running at a full sprint, maybe Mr. Lewis felt threatened at that point. I mean, I don't know. I can only speculate there. But I think that where things really unraveled, it was just the initial shot that was fired that kind of put the chain of events into place. All right. Off topic? Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask about the shooting that happened not far from Coolidge High School yesterday.
Oh, yes,
if you have
sir.
any updates as far as the narrative, what happened, and also have you identified a suspect? And scuttlebutt my coworker heard in the neighborhood was that the suspect actually worked in some sort of violence prevention. Can you comment on any of that?
Yeah. Yes. So we had a shooting yesterday, just before 3:00 p.m. It occurred over on the 500 block of Somerset Street. Thank you. And what we know is that at least two individuals who appear to be acquainted with each other somehow got involved in some type of dispute. And as a result of that, something that's you have heard me say time and time again, somebody in that dispute had a gun. and they used that firearm. There's a lot of speculation in community. I've heard the same thing. Oh, it was a, I think you mentioned, so you said violence interrupter. I mean, I've heard that, but what I will say at this point is we're going to go where the evidence takes us. The community has been helpful to this point. That investigation continues to progress, and like this case, we will work it until we actually get to who the person is that's responsible for that shooting yesterday. And right now, we're not in position where we actually know who that is. All right.
Could you speak about the optics of someone who's working as part of this safe passage program? They weren't on duty, but they were wearing their vest at the time. That's our understanding. In theory, someone who's working to make DC safer is themselves involved in an act of gun violence. Just speak about or comment on that, the optics of that.
Yeah, well, the optics obviously are troubling to me anytime someone gets shot. I certainly understand your point that you're making. Sometimes when people find themselves in dispute, it doesn't matter where they are. It could be in a place where we never have violent issues, but because these two individuals who appear to be known to each other kind of are in that space, and someone has a gun in that space, what, some years ago may have been a fist fight, turned into what it did because someone had a firearm. So, I mean, that scenario, unfortunately, it plays out in a lot of different spaces, not just in communities here in the District of Columbia and surrounding areas, but, I mean, when we just talk about the national landscape around this whole issue of gun violence, right? I mean, we see it, playing out, some argument between somebody over something that nobody needs to die over ends in gunfire. So I think in this case, as we continue to work forward and continue to work with community on it, we'll get to the bottom of it. I'm very confident in that, and we just really need to just kind of put the pieces together. I'll take two more questions, yeah. No, there's not a weapon recovered, Mark. No, we're working right now with community members, and the detectives are out right now, even as we speak, following up on different leads and so forth. All right, last one. Yes, ma'am.
Another off-topic question.
Yes,
In
ma'am.
light of the Tyree Nichols shooting, the ACLU is calling nationwide for a lot of the police departments to dismantle these special units. Any consideration into dismantling the gun recovery units because perhaps some of those complaints aren't reported publicly?
So our gun recovery unit was revamped several years ago, and I think that to paint that with a broad brush, to say all specialized units should be disbanded as a result of something that happened in Memphis, I think that that's a reach. I think that when you have units like that, specialized units, that they have to be properly supervised and managed. I think that that's really key. That is very important. You have officers that are out there, they're doing dangerous work, they're coming in to contact in situations where firearms and those types of things are likely to be recovered. Sometimes there are police use of forces, and I can't think of a situation where where you would want for a police official to be on the scene more so than like those types of situations. So as part of our revamp, our teams, they certainly focus on recovery of firearms, but also they're partnering with federal investigators from ATF, from FBI, as they go out and do their work, focusing in on gun trafficking as a whole. So we've done some revamping, we've done some retraining, we've added additional supervisory and managerial personnel 2 years ago, and that's the space where we are. I think that as this ACLU call for disbanding, I think that again, that's a far reach, and I think that perhaps looking at agencies individually to see who has or does not have those safeguards in place. I think that that's really important. Thank you all so much.